I understand the risks, but we can't wait. We have to move the condition now. The tarmac trembled before anyone even heard the rotors. Then the sky over Seattle General tore open as 4 Black Hawk helicopters descended in a tight combat formation, the kind usually seen over war zones, not civilian parking lots. Dust exploded outward, blinding the terrified hospital security team who rushed forward, waving their arms and shouting for them to stop. They didn't stand a chance. A dozen Marines in full tactical gear hit the ground in perfect sync. Weapons slung but ready, scanning. Rooftops and entrances like they were securing hostile territory. They ignored the shouting chief surgeon and the frantic hospital director. Their captain didn't ask for administration. He didn't ask for a doctor. He marched straight toward the emergency entrance and bellowed one name that froze the entire ER. Steph mid-step. We need Angel 6. Where the hell is Angel 6? Inside the linoleum floor of Seattle General's emergency room gleamed under harsh fluorescent lights, a sterile gray Clara Haway knew far too well. She knew it because she spent most of her 12-hour shifts staring at it head down trying to make herself small. To the high-powered trauma surgeons and ambitious residents, Clara was just the slow nurse, the 40-year-old with the heavy limp who couldn't run when a code blue was called. She handled bedpans, paperwork, and intoxicated walk-ins on Friday nights. No one asked why she limped. No one cared. "Move it, Holloway. You're blocking the hallway," snapped Dr. Adrian Prescott as he brushed past her. Prescott was Seattle General Star trauma surgeon. Brilliant, handsome, and painfully aware of both. His ego filled every room before he did. Clara stumbled, catching herself on the nurse's station. Her left leg held together by titanium pins and old scar tissue throbbed with a dull familiar egg. "Sorry, doctor," she murmured. "Don't be sorry. Be faster." Prescott shot back. "We've got a multi-car pileup coming. If you can't keep up, try geriatrics, or better yet, the morgue. They don't move much down there." A few younger nurses giggled nervously. To them, Prescott was a hero. To them, Clara was furniture, slightly broken furniture. She adjusted her scrubs and returned to organizing the supply cart. Face calm, she'd been yelled at by drill instructors in the pouring rain of Parrot Island and cursed out by wounded Marines in the dust of Kandahar. Prescott's arrogance was just background noise compared to the thunder of mortar fire, but she kept that to herself here. She was just Clara, not Lieutenant Commander Hellick, not a decorated flight nurse, and certainly not the call sign buried deep in a classified personnel file. "Hey, Clara," whispered Sarah, a kind but overwhelmed junior nurse. "Ignore him. We've got a very important person coming in with the crash victims. Some senator's kid." "It's fine," Clara said softly, scanning the ER with quiet precision. While others saw chaos, Clara saw patterns. She saw bed 4 slipping towards shock before the monitors changed. She saw intern fumbling in intubation, but she stayed silent. In this world, a limping nurse wasn't supposed to diagnose. She was supposed to fetch blanket. The ER doors burst open as paramedics rushed in with a teenage boy covered in blood. 17-year-old male. Unrestrained driver. "Blunt chest trauma," a medic shouted. Prescott took command instantly. "Bay 1, chest x-ray, full labs." Now Clara stepped back against the wall, hands clasped behind her. Back watching. Prescott was skilled, but he was rushing. Treating the injury, not the whole picture. From across the room, Clara saw it. Distended neck veins, uneven chest rise, falling blood pressure without the expect heart rate spike. Her mind ran the algorithm automatically. Tension pneumothorax or cardiac tamponade. She took a step forward. "Doctor," she said calmly. Check breath. "Sounds on the right. The track is deviating." Prescott spun furious. "Did I ask for input from the peanut gallery? I'm the attending. Go get 2 units of O negative and stay out of the way." Clara said nothing. She limped toward the blood bank, jaw tight. Pain flared in her leg. A reminder of the night she'd earned that limp, hanging upside down in a burning helicopter, keeping a Marine alive with one hand while tourniqueting, her own shattered thigh with the other. She returned with the blood. The boy was crashing. "BP 60 over 40, the intern shouted. "We're losing him." "Push-up. Where's that blood?" Prescott yelled, and across the parking lot the Blackhawks were still idling, waiting for Angel 6. "Hello, away. Move your ass." Clara handed off the blood, her eyes locking onto the patient's chest again. It was worse. The deviation was visible now. If Prescott didn't decompress that chest in the next 60 seconds, the boy would be dead. He needs a needle decompression, Clara said louder this time. Right second intercostal space now. The room went silent for a microcond. Prescott threw his stethoscope onto the E-tray with a clatter. He walked up to Clara, invading her personal space, looming over her. "Get out," he hissed. "Get out of my trauma bay. You are relieved of duty. Get out before I have security drag you out." Clara looked him in the eye. For a split second, the slow nurse vanished and something steely and dangerous flickered in her gaze. But she blinked and it was gone. "Yes, doctor," she said. She turned and limped away, the sound of her uneven gait echoing under the beep of the alarms. She walked toward the break room, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with frustration. She knew the boy was going to code, and she knew Prescott wouldn't catch it until it was too late. She was just pouring herself a cup of stale coffee when the ground shook. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a vibration that rattled the mugs on the shelf, a deep thumping rhythm that she felt in her bones before she heard it with her ears. Clara froze. She knew that sound. Every cell in her body knew that sound. It was the sound of salvation and the sound of destruction. Rotor's heavy lift. She moved to the window of the brick room which overlooked the parking lot. Her eyes widened, approaching from the south. Flying low and fast over the city skyline were 4 black shapes, not the red and white of the medevac choppers. These were matte black and olive drab military. The hospital PI system crackled to life. The voice of the receptionist trembling. "Security to the main entrance. We have unauthorized aircraft landing in the parking lot. Repeat. Unauthorized landing in the ER." The panic shifted from the dying boy to the windows. Patients and nurses alike crowded the glass. "Is it a terrorist attack?" "Kay?" someone screamed. "No," Dr. Prescott shouted, trying to regain control of his floor. "It's probably just a drill gone wrong. Ignore it. Focus on the patients." But it was impossible to ignore. The roar was deafening now. The first helicopter, a 60 Blackhawk with no markings other than a Sol Gray serial number, flared aggressively over the rows of parked cars. The wash from the rotor sent a compact car skidding sideways. Clara watched from the break room, her coffee forgotten. She pressed her hand against the glass. "What are they doing here?" she thought. "This isn't a designated LZ. They're coming in hot." She watched as the lead chopper touched down its wheels, barely kissing the asphalt before the side doors flew open. They didn't wait for the rotors to slow. Men poured out. Clara counted them instantly. 12 full kit plate carriers, M4 carbines, drop holsters, fast helmets with comms. This wasn't a National Guard transport, this was a quick reaction force. She squinted. The patches on their shoulders were velcroed on dark gray on black, but she recognized the unit insignia. A dagger through a globe. Force Recon. "Oh God," Clara whispered. The second and third choppers landed in a tight perimeter, blocking off the ambulance bay. The fourth hovered overhead, providing overwatch, its sniper leaning out the open door. The doors to the ER burst open, but it wasn't patients coming in. It was the hospital security guard. An elderly man named Frank, running backward, his hands up. "I couldn't stop them," Frank yelled. "They have guns." Behind him, the double doors were kicked open so hard one of them cracked off its hinges. 3 Marines entered first, sweeping the room with 2 air rifles. They didn't aim at the civilians, but their discipline was terrifying. They moved like water flowing around gurneys and freezing the room with their presence. "Everybody stay exactly where you are," the lead Marine shouted. His voice was amplified by the tactical throat mic booming through the small speaker on his vest, hands visible. No sudden movements. Dr. Prescott stepped out from the trauma bay, his gloves covered in the teenager's blood. His arrogance, usually his armor, was now a liability. "Who do you think you are?" Prescott demanded, marching toward the armed men. "This is a hospital. You can't just barge in here with weapons. I have a patient dying in there." The lead Marine didn't even blink. He was a giant of a man, easily 6 feet 4 inches in, with a scar running through his eyebrow. He simply stepped forward and shoved Prescott back with one hand. It wasn't a violent shove, just a dismissal of an obstacle. Prescott stumbled back 5 trillions, gasping. "I am Captain Silas Thorne, United States Marine Corps." The giant boomed. "And I am not here for your patient, doctor. I am here for my soldier." "Your soldier?" Prescott sputtered, his face turning purple. "We don't have any military admits today. You have the wrong hospital." Captain Thorne ignored him. He reached up and keyed his radio. "Command, we have secured the lobby. Scanning for asset." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his tactical vest and unfolded it. He looked around the room, his eyes scanning the terrified faces of the nurses and doctors. I am looking for a former service member, Thorne announced, his voice echoing off the tile. We have intelligence that she is employed at this facility. We need her immediate help. Why? It is a matter of national security. The room was silent. Who? Prescott asked, his voice shaking slightly. Who are you looking for? Thorne looked at the paper, then back at the room. Her name is Clara Holloway, but in the Corps, she was known as Angel 6. A gasp went through the room, heads turned slowly, agonizingly. Eyes shifted toward the back of the nurse's station, toward the break room door. Dr. Prescott looked confused. Hello, the janitor nurse. He let out a breathless, incredulous laugh. You're joking. You landed 4 helicopters for the woman who empties the bedpans. Thorne's eyes narrowed. He took a step toward Prescott, and the air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Watch your tone, civilian. You are speaking about a recipient of the Navy Cross. The silence that followed was absolute. Clara stood in the doorway of the break room. She had heard everything. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She hadn't heard that call sign in years. Angel 6. She smoothed her scrubs. She took a deep breath. She didn't want this. She had spent 7 years hiding from this, but she knew the look on Captain Thorne's face. She knew that stance. They weren't here for a reunion. Someone was in trouble. Bad trouble. Claire pushed the door open. The squeak of the hinge sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. I'm here, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. Every head turned. Dr. Prescott looked at her, his mouth hanging open. The young intern Davis looked from the Marines to Clara and back. Captain Thorne turned. When he saw her, the hard lines of his face softened for just a fraction of a second. He saw the gray in her hair, the tired lines around her eyes, and he saw the way she leaned on her left leg, but he didn't see it. He snapped to attention. His boots to a hallam slammed together with a crack that made the triage nurse jump. He brought his hand up in a crisp, sharp salute. Ma'am, Thorne said, his voice respectful. Captain Thorne, 1st Recon. We require your assistance. We have a catastrophic situation in the field, and the flight surgeon is down. We have a mass casualty event involving a covert unit 30 miles north. They are trapped in a ravine. We can't get a medevac in, but we can get a bird to hover. He lowered his hand. We need a flight nurse who is combat certified for high-angle rescue. We checked the database. You were the only one in the tri-state area with the rating. Clara stared at him. Captain, I haven't flown in 7 years. My leg. We don't need your legs, Mom, Thorne said intensely. We need your hands and we need your brain. There are 7 Marines bleeding out on a mountain right now. One of them is the General's son. They specifically asked for you. Asked for me? Claire whispered. No. Thorne corrected himself. The pinned-down unit. They didn't ask for a nurse. They radioed that they wouldn't let anyone touch them except Tel 6. They said you served with their say in Fallujah. Clara's breath hitched. Fallujah, is it? She started, her voice trembling. Is it Commander Ricks? Thorne nodded grimly. It is, and he's critical. Clara didn't hesitate anymore. The slow nurse evaporated. The woman who apologized for existing was gone. In her place stood Angel 6. She looked at Thorne. My kit is at my apartment. We have a full trauma kit on the bird. Thorne said, we leave in 2 minutes. Clara nodded. She took a step forward, her limb pronounced, but her movement purposeful. Holloway, Prescott shouted, finding his voice. You can't leave. You are on shift. If you walk out those doors, you are fired. Do you hear me? Fired. Clara stopped. She turned slowly to face Dr. Prescott. She looked at the man who had belittled her for 2 years, the man who had mocked her pain and ignored her skill. She walked up to him. She reached into her pocket, pulled out her hospital ID badge, dropped it into the front pocket of his pristine white lab coat. Dr. Prescott, she said, her voice cool and commanding. That boy in Bay 1 has attention. Yum. Mothax. Needle. Decompress him now or you'll be explaining to his senator father why he died. And as for firing me, she smiled a cold, sharp smile. I resign. She turned to Captain Thorne. Let's go. The interior of the MH-60M Blackhawk was a sensory assault of noise, vibration, and the overwhelming smell of JP-8 jet fuel, a scent that acted as a time machine for Clara. The moment the side doors slid shut and the bird banked hard to the left, leading the Seattle skyline behind the hospital ceased to exist. Dr. Prescott, the rude in turns, the sterile gray floors, They were a lifetime away. Captain Thorne handed Clara a headset. She pulled it over her ears, the active noise cancellation, instantly dampening the roar of the rotors to a dull hum. He then pointed to a duffel bag secured to the floor webbing near her feet. "We brought your old loadout," Thorne said, his voice crackling over the intercom. "Standard issue flight suit boots in a Tier 2 trauma bag. RX kept it." He said, "You'd be back one day." Claire looked at the bag, a lump forming in her throat. Commander Rix, the man currently bleeding out on a mountain, had kept her gear for 7 years. She unbuckled her seatbelt, a violation of safety protocol that Thorne ignored, and began to strip off her blue hospital scrubs. She didn't care about modesty. She was in a fuselage full of Marines, and to them, she was just another piece of essential equipment, like a rifle or a radio. She pulled on the flight suit. It was a little loose. She had lost muscle mass since her discharge, but the familiar weight of the fabric felt like armor. She laced up the tactical boots, wincing as she tightened the left one over the scar tissue of her ankle. The pain was sharp, a jagged reminder of why she had left the service, but she shoved it into a mental box and locked the lid. "Sit rep, Captain Clara," Ross said, plugging her comms into the wall jack. Her voice had changed. The raspy, apologetic tone of Nurse Holloway was gone, replaced by the clipped, authoritative cadence of Lieutenant Commander Holloway. Thorne nodded, appreciating the shift. He pulled a tablet from his vest and passed it to her. "Training exercise in the North Cascades." Thorne explained, his face grim. "Unit was first recon engaging in high-altitude survival and evasion. But something went wrong. We lost comms with them 4 hours ago. When we finally re-established contact, the radio operator was frantic. They took fire." Clara looked up from the map on the tablet. "Fire in the Cascades. It's a training op." "That's the twist," Thorne said darkly. "They stumbled onto something they weren't supposed to see. Illegal grow-op drug runners. Maybe something worse. We don't have eyes on the hostiles, but they, heavily armed. They shot down the extraction bird and Osprey. It went down hard in a box canyon known as the Devil's Throat. The terrain is too steep for us to land. We have to hover and winch you down." Clara studied the topography map. The contour lines were stacked on top of each other. It was a vertical nightmare. Casualties, 7 confirmed on the ground, 3 critical. Commander Rix took a round to the abdomen and has shrapnel from the crash in his neck. The corpsman is dead. RX is the highest-ranking officer on the ground, but he's incapacitated. The one calling the shots right now is a lance corporal named Sterling. Thorne paused. "Sterling is General Sterling's son. The kid is green. He's panicking and he's screaming for Angel 6 because his father told him stories about you." Clara closed her eyes for a second. The general's son. That explained the 4 helicopters. Politics always bled into warfare, but RX was family. "How long until we're on station?" 6 minutes. The pilot's voice cut in. "Weather is deteriorating. We have a blizzard front moving in from the north. Visibility is dropping to 0. If we don't drop you in the next 10 minutes, we scrub the mission." Clara looked out the small porthole window. The lush green of the Seattle suburbs had given way to the jagged snow-capped teeth of the Cascade Mountains. Gray clouds were swirling around the peaks like sharks circling a kill. She felt the old fear clawing at her stomach. The last time she had been in a helicopter over hostile terrain, she hadn't walked away. She had crawled. Flashback Kandahar 2018. The night was hot, smelling of sulfur and rot. The RPG had come out of nowhere, hitting the tail rotor. The spin had been nauseating. The impact shattered her world and her leg. She remembered hanging upside down, the blood rushing to her head, watching RX drag the pilot out of the burning wreckage. He had come back for her. He had carried her 3 miles on a broken back. He had saved her life. Ma'am Thorne's voice snapped her back to the present. Clara looked at him. Her hands were trembling slightly. She natured them into fists. "I'm good," she lied. She reached into the duffel bag and pulled out a smaller pouch. Inside was her personal medical kit, intubation blades, combat gauze, chest seals, and a heavy dose of morphine. She rolled up the sleeve of her flight suit to check her watch, revealing the tattoo on her inner forearm. It was faded now, but the ink was still legible. A pair of wings wrapping around the number 6 with the Latin phrase, "No, Tim, be not afraid." Thorne saw it. He tapped his own chest. "The boys on the ground. They think you're a myth. You know the Angel of Kandahar. Rix kept your legend alive." "Legends don't stop bleeding, Captain," Claire muttered, checking the seal on a bag of saline. "Tourniquets do. 2 minutes," the pilot yelled. "We're taking small arms fire. I repeat, taking fire. The helicopter lurched violently to the right. A sound like hail hitting a tin roof erupted along the fuselage, bullets impacting the armor. Lock and load. Thorne screamed, dragging the charging handle of his carbine. The other Marines in the cabin instantly shifted from passive passengers to lethal predators. Clara grabbed the overhead strap. The vibration changed. The chopper was slowing down, entering a hover. The door gunner on the right side opened fire with T. He minigunned the deafening, shaking the fillings in Clara's teeth. "We're over the LZ," the crew chief shouted, sliding the side door open. Freezing wind and snow blasted into the cabin, instantly sucking T. He warmed out. Clara looked down through the swirling snow. She saw the wreckage of the Osprey, a twisted metal skeleton smoking in the ravine. Traces were flying back and forth between the tree and the crash site. "It's too hot to land," the pilot screamed. "We have to fast. Ropeway, you're up first. If we stay here, we're dead." Clara unclipped her safety belt. She grabbed her medical bag. She limped to the edge of the open door and looked down. It was a 6,050 feet drop into a war zone. Her bad leg throbbed in anticipation. Thorne grabbed her shoulder harness. "You sure about this, Angel?" Clara looked at the chaos below. She saw a figure waving a strobe light. "Rix." She pulled her goggles down over her eyes. "Send me." The rope burned her gloves. A friction generated heat that battled the biting cold of the mountain air. Clara descended fast. Too fast. The tactical descent was designed for young men with healthy knees, not 40-year-old women with titanium pins holding their tibia together. But adrenaline is a powerful anesthetic. Clara are focused on the ground, rushing up to meet her. 30 feet 2010. She flared her legs trying to land on her good side, but the uneven terrain of the ravine had other plans. She hit a patch of loose shale and collapsed her bad leg, buckling under the weight of the trauma bag. A bolt of white-hot agony shot up her spine, blinding her for a second. She gasped, biting her lips so hard she tasted copper. "Move. You have to move. Bullets Injed off. The rocks inches from her head. The sniper in the train had seen the insertion, suppressing fire. A voice screamed from the wreckage. 3 Marines from the crash site popped up from behind the twisted fuse of the Osprey and unleashed a wall of lead toward the trees. It bought Clara the 3 seconds she needed. She scrambled on hands and knees, dragging the heavy medical bag through the mud and snow, diving behind the cover of the Osprey's landing gear. She was instantly surrounded by the smell of burnt hydraulic fluid and the metallic tang of blood. "You made it," a young Marine, his face smeared with camouflage paint and dirt, grabbed her vest and hauled her further into cover. He looked barely 20. His eyes were wide, the pupils dilated with terror. "I'm Corporal Sterling. Dad said you'd come." Clara grabbed his collar, pulling him close to be heard over the roar of the gunship overhead. "Where is Commander Rix? Take me to him now. He's in the fuselage. He's bad, man. He's really bad." Sterling led her deeper into the broken aircraft. The interior was a nightmare. The red emergency lights were flickering, casting strobe shadows over the carnage. 4 Marines were huddled in defensive positions at the jagged openings of the hull. In the center, lying on a thermal blanket, was Commander David Rix. Clara dropped to her knees beside him. He looked older than she remembered. His hair was silver now, and his face was gray, the color of wet ash. A makeshift dressing was pressed against his neck, soaked through with bright red arterial blood. Another bandage was wrapped around his abdomen. "Dave," Clara whispered, her hands already moving, snapping on blue knit row gloves. Rick's eyes fluttered open. They were hazy, unfocused. He blinked, trying to clear the fog of shock. When he saw her, a weak, crooked smile touched his lips. "Chara," he rasped, blood bubbling slightly at the corner of his mouth. "You ignored my direct order to stay retired." "I never was good at following orders," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. She peeled back the neck dressing. It was a jagged laceration, missing the corroded by millimeters, but nicking the jugular. He was losing blood fast, but it was controllable. The abdominal wound, however, was the real killer. Sterling put pressure here. Clar barked, guiding the young corporal's hands to the neck wound. "Don't let up. If he bleeds out, it's on you." She cut open Rick's shirt. A single bullet entry wound is below the ribs. No exit wound. That meant the bullet was bouncing around inside, shredding organs. His stomach was distended. Internal bleeding. "Pressure is 70/40. A nearby Marine with a shattered arm said, reading a portable monitor. "His crashing mom, I need fluid," Clara ordered. "Start a line 18 gauge wide open." Suddenly the hull of the Osprey rang like a bell. Clang. An RPG had impacted the nose of the aircraft just 10 feet away. Dust and debris rained down on them. "They're flanking us," Sterling screamed, taking his hand off Rick's neck to grab his rifle. "They're coming down the ridge. Keep your hand on the damn wound." "Sterling," Clara roared, shoving him back down. LaForce recon boys handled the shooting. "Your job is to be a sandbag. Do not move." RX grabbed Clarara's wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong for a dying man. "Clarara," he wheezed, "listen to me. The laptop in the cockpit. You have to destroy it." "Not now, Dave," she said, injecting morphine into his foreline. "No." He tried to sit up, groaning in pain. "It's not drug runners. It's mercenaries. Black Ops. They want the drive. It has the coordinates for the prototype." Clarara froze for a split second. The training exercise story was falling apart. "If they get it," RX coughed violently, "they'll kill everyone to cover it up. You have to save the boy. Sterling, get him out. Leave me. I'm not leaving you," Clarara said, her voice fierce. She leaned close to his ear. "I walked out of a shift with Adrian Prescott to be here. I am not going back empty-handed. You are going to live, Dave, even if I have to carry you out myself." "Incoming," someone shouted. The world exploded. A mortar round landed just outside the open hatch. The concussion wave picked Clara up and threw her against the bulkhead. Her head slammed into the mill and her vision went black for a second. She shook her head, fighting the ringing in her ears. She looked up. Sterling was on the ground, dazed. Rick S. was unconscious and standing at the breeze in the hull, silhouetted by the snow, and the muzzle flashes were three figures. They weren't wearing the ragtag clothes of drug runners. They were wearing high-end, tactical gear night vision goggles and carrying suppressed Vector SMGs. Mercenaries professionals. One of them raised his weapon, aiming directly at the unconscious general's son. Clarara didn't think. She didn't analyze. The muscle memory of 1,000 DRS kicked in. She was unarmed. Her medical status theoretically protected her, but these men didn't care about the Geneva Convention. She grabbed the only thing within reach, a flare gun from the emergency survival kit strapped to the wall. She raised it and pulled the trigger. The flare hit the lead mercenary square in the chest plate. It didn't penetrate, but the phosphorus ignited with a blinding white intensity, burning at 3,000 degrees. The man screamed, dropping his weapon and thrashing as the fire engulfed his vest. The other two mercenaries flinched, blinded by the sudden magnesium glare in their night vision goggles. "Clear the door!" Clara screamed. Captain Thorne dropped from the ceiling hatch, descending on a rope like a vengeful god. He landed on the second mercenary, his combat knife flashing. The rescue team had arrived, but RX was flatlining. "I need light. Someone give me light," Clarara yelled. The firefight had pushed outside the fuselage. Thorne and his force recon team were pushing the mercenar. Eyes back up the ridge, buying her a bubble of safety. But inside the wreck, the war was biological. RX's heart had stopped. "Starting compressions," Sterling yelled, finally finding his courage. He began pumping RX's chest. "Too fast. Slow down." Clarara corrected him. "Let the chest recoil." She scrambled to her bag. She needed to do a thoracotomy. Open his chest to clamp the aorta. Stop the abdominal bleeding long enough to get him to a hospital. But doing that in a frozen, dirty helicopter wreck was insanity. It was suicide. "He's dead if you don't," her inner voice whispered. "Get me the scalpel." Clarara ordered the Marine with a broken arm and the betadine. Pour it everywhere. She ripped the rest of Rick's shirt open. "What are you doing?" Sterling asked, breathless from the CPR. "I'm going to clamp his aorta," Clara said calmly. "Stop compressions. He has no pulse." "I know. That's why I'm cutting him open." She made the incision, a long vertical cut down the center of his chest. Blood didn't flow. His pressure was 0. She used a rib spreader from the heavy rescue kit to crack the sternum. The sound of bones snapping made Sterling retch, but he held the flashlight steady. Clarara reached into the chest cavity of the man she had loved like a brother for 20 years. Her hands were warm inside his body, a stark contrast to the freezing wind howling outside. She found the descending aorta. She clamped it with her fingers, pressing it against the spine. "EP1 mg, she shouted. The Marine with the broken arm fumbled with the syringe and injected it into the fourth. Clarara squeezed the heart manually. Once, twice, 3 times. It felt like a dead bird in her hand, still limp. "Come on, Dave," she hissed. "Don't you die on me. Not here. Not in the snow." She squeezed again. Thump, a weak flutter against her palm. "I got a rhythm," she yelled. "Come on, Thump. Thump. The heart began to beat on its own, struggling, irregular but beating. By clamping the aorta, she had diverted all the remaining blood to his brain and heart, sacrificing the lower body for now. "Pulse is back," the Marine shouted. "Weak, but palpable." "We have to move him," Chlorora said, withdrawing her hand, but keeping the clamp in place with a pair of surgical forceps. "Now if we wait, he dies from hypothermia." She cued her headset. "Thorn status. Hostiles are retreating, but they're regrouping for a heavy push." Thorn's voice was breathless. "We have a 3-minute window before they bring up a 50 cal. Is the package ready to move?" "Package is critical but stable," Chlorara replied. "Woo. Need a hoist extraction now. The weather is zero vis angel." The pilot cut in. "I can't see the deck." "Follow my voice," Clar yelled. "I'm popping green smoke." She grabbed a smoke canister and threw it out to the back hatch. Thick green smoke billowed out instantly, whipped away by the wind, but visible enough. The roar of the Black Hawk increased. The downdraft nearly knocked them over. The basket WAS lowered. "Get him in," Chlorara ordered. They loaded Rex into the rescue basket. It was a clumsy, desperate struggle. Chlorara had to run alongside the basket as they dragged it, checking the clamp sticking out of his chest. As the basket lifted off the ground, a bullet pinged off the middle rail. "Go, go, go," Thorn screamed, laying down suppressive fire with his saw. Clar hooked her own carabiner to the hoist cable above the basket. She wasn't going to ride up separately. She needed to monitor Rick's every second of the ascent. They lifted off the ground, swinging wildly in the wind. Chlorara wrapped her legs around the basket, shielding Rick's open chest with her own body. Below them, the ravine was a light show of traces. Above them, the dark belly of the helicopter promised safety. But as they reached the halfway point, 50 feet in the air, the winch jammed. They stopped dead, suspended in the void, jammed. The crew chief screamed over the comms, "Hydraulic failure on the secondary winch. I can't pull you up." Chlorara looked down. The mercenaries were coming out of the trees. They were looking up. They were sitting ducks. "Manual crank." The pilot screamed. "Who's the manual crank?" "It'll take 4 minutes," the chief yelled back. "We don't have 5 minutes." Thorn's voice cut in from the ground. "They're setting up a rocket-propelled grenade. You're the target." Chlorara looked at Rix. His eyes were open again. He was looking at her. "Cut the line," he whispered. "Save yourself." Chlorara looked out the cable. She looked at the open door of the helicopter above where the crew chief was frantically cranking a lever. She looked down at the men aiming the RPG. She reached into her vest and pulled out her sidearm, a standard-issue M9 Beretta she had been given on the bird. She wasn't going to cut the line. She aimed down at the dark shape of the RPG gunner in the snow 50 feet below. She took a deep breath, timing the sway of the cable. "No, Tim," she fired. The recoil of the Berea kicked against Chlorara's palm. A jarring snap in the freezing air. 50 feet below the mercenary, sighting the RPG crumpled into the snow, the unguided rocket launching harmlessly into the sky and detonating against the canyon wall in a shower of useless sparks. "Clear! We are clear!" Chlorara screamed into her headset, though the wind snatched the words away. The manual winch groaned a terrible metal-on-metal screeching that vibrated down the steel cable and into her bones. Inch by agonizing inch, the basket rose. Chlorara kept her legs wrapped tightly around the frame, her body acting as a human shield against the biting wind and any stray rounds from the ground. Her eyes, however, never left Commander RX's chest. The aortic clamp was slipping. The vibration of the ascent was shaking the surgical instrument loose. If it popped off, RX would bleed out in seconds, his heart pumping his remaining life into the chest cavity she had just cracked open. "Steady," Clar yelled at the Karai. "W Chief as..." Her head cleared the floor of the Blackhawk. "Don't jerk it." Strong hands grabbed her tactical vest. Captain Thorn and the crew chief hauled the basket into the cabin with a heave that nearly dislocated her shoulder. They slid the basket across a diamond plate floor, securing it instantly. "Pilot, get us out of here," Thorn roared. "Nap of the earth. Stay low." The Black Hawk banked violently, diving over the Rigel line to escape the kill zone. The GE force pressed Chlora into the floor, but she didn't let go of the clamp. "I need light," she barked. "He's fibrillating again." The Kevin was bathed in the red glow of tactical lights. It was a nightmare operating theater. The helicopter was shaking the air. Pressure was fluctuating, and the patient was technically dead, kept alive only by a piece of steel pinching a major artery. Corporal Sterling, the general's son, was huddled in the corner. staring at Clarura with wide, terrified eyes. He had just watched a middle-aged nurse with a limp rappel down a rope perform open-heart surgery in a wreck and shoot a man from a hanging cable. Is he going to make it? Sterling stammered. Hold this bag, Clarura ordered, ignoring the question. Squeeze it. Every time I nod, you squeeze. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Clarura looked at the monitor. Rick's vitals were erratic. She needed to stabilize the clamp and pack the chest. Thorne, get me on the comms with the receiving hospital, Clarura said, her hands deep in the chest cavity, adjusting the packing gauze. We aren't going to the base. He won't make the flight to Madigan. We have to go back to Seattle. General negative. Angel, Thorne said, listening to his earpiece. Command says the package is too sensitive. The laptop, the data. We can't bring that into a civilian sector. Clarura looked up, her face smeared with grease and blood. Her eyes were furious. I don't care about the laptop, Captain. I care about the man who saved my life in Kandahar. He has a clamped aorta and a tension pneumothorax. Seattle General is 6 minutes out. Madigan is 20. If we fly to the base, you will be landing with a corpse. Do you want to explain to General Sterling why his son's savior died? Because of protocol. Thorne hesitated. He looked at Rix, then at Clarura. He saw the fire in her eyes, the same fire that had earned her the Navy Cross. He keyed his radio. Command, this is Dagger 11. We are declaring a medical emergency. Diverting to Seattle. General Pilot Punchett, copy that. The pilot responded, and the engines whining as he pushed the throttle to the stops. Clarura focused back on the wound. Stay with me, Dave. We're almost home. The flight was a blur of alarms and desperate measures. Twice Erex's pressure bottomed out. Twice. Clarura had to manually massage his heart, her hand rhythmically pumping, life through his veins while the Marines watched in reverent silence. As the Seattle skyline came into view, the hospital helipad was already illuminate. But as they approached, Clarura saw something that made her blood boil. The helipad was empty of medical personnel. Security guards were blocking the doors. They aren't ready for us, Clarura realized. Prescott blocked the landing. He what? Thorne growled. Dr. Prescott, he's the trauma chief. He probably thinks this is a stunt. Thorne wrecked the slide of his rifle. Set it down, pilot. If anyone gets in her way, I'll remove them. The Black Hawk flared over the hospital roof, the wash kicking up debris. The wheels slammed down onto the painted H. Before the rotors even slowed, Thorne kicked the door open. He jumped out, his weapon held low but ready, his team fanning out to secure the perimeter. The hospital security guards, who had been ordered to deny access, took one look at the Force Recon Marines and backed away. Hands raised. Clarura unbuckled. She grabbed the side of the gurney. Let's move. On my count, 1, 2, 3. They rushed Rix out of the chopper. The wind was howling, whipping Clarura's hair across her face. She limped heavily, her bad legs screaming in protest, but she didn't slow down. She ran alongside the gurney, her hands still holding the clamp inside RX's chest. They burst through the roof access doors and into the trauma elevator. Trauma Bay 1, Clarura ordered, and someone, Paige Prescott, tell him if he isn't there in 30 seconds. I'm doing the surgery myself. The elevator doors dinged open on the ER floor, revealing a scene of utter confusion. The CENT-A had heard the helicopter, but no one knew what was happening when Clarura Holloway burst out flanked by 4 heavily armed Marines, and pushing a gurney with a man whose chest was literally cracked open. The entire floor froze. Dr. Adrian Prescott was standing at the nurse's station holding a coffee, laughing with a resident. He turned and the smile died on his face. He saw Clarura, but it wasn't the Clarura he knew. She was wearing a flight suit covered in mud and blood. Her hair was wild. She moved with a terrifying intensity, the limp in her gait now looking like the stride of a wounded predator rather than a liability. Get out of my way, Clarura shouted, her voice echoing down the corridor. Hello, Prescott sputtered, dropping his coffee cup. It shattered, splashing hot liquid on his pristine white shoes. What is the meaning of this? You resigned. You can't just patient mail. 52 gunshot wound to the abdomen, penetrating trauma to the neck. Emergency thoracotomy performed in the field. Clarura rattled off the report with machine gun precision as she rolled past him. Aorta is clamped. I need the OPREP now. Type and cross-match for 10 units of 1 gram. Get the vascular team. She didn't stop to ask for permission. She didn't look down. She drove the gurney straight into Trauma Bay 1. Prescott ran after them, his face red with indignation. "Security, stop her. She's practicing medicine without a license. She's a nurse." He reached out to grab Clarara's arm as she transferred RX to the hospital bed. Before his fingers could graze her flight suit, Captain Thorne stepped in. The giant Marine didn't shout. He simply placed a gloved hand on Prescott's chest and shoved him back against the wall hard enough to knock the wind out of him. "Touch her again," Thorne said, his voice dropping to a subsonic growl. "And you will need a trauma surgeon." "This is my hospital," Prescott wheezed. "And that is my commanding officer on that table," Thorne replied. "And she is the only reason he is still breathing. You will take orders from her, or you will stand down." Prescott looked around. The entire ER staff, Sarah Davis, the nurses, the orderlies were watching. They weren't looking at Prescott with the usual fear or admiration. They were looking at Clarara. They were looking at the woman I had ignored for years now, commanding a room full of Special Forces soldiers. "Dr. Prescott," Clarara said, not looking up as she connected Ricks to the hospital monitors. "I need a vascular surgeon to repair the AOT. Are you going to scrub in, or do I need to call someone competent?" The insult hung in the air, sharp and brutal. Prescott swallowed his pride. He saw the open chest, he saw the clamp, he realized with a sinking feeling the level of skill it took to perform that procedure in a hovering helicopter. He looked at Clarara's hands. They were steady as rock. "I'll scrub in," Prescott muttered. "Good," Clarara said. "But I'm lead on this. You repair the vest." I manage the patient. That's highly irregular. Do it." The next 4 hours were a blur. Clarara didn't leave the O. She stood at the head of the table monitoring anesthesia, dictated blood products, and guiding Prescott's hands when his arrogance made him sloppy. For the first time in his career, Adrian Prescott was the assistant. When the final stitch was thrown and RX was moved to the ICU stable, Clarara finally stepped back. She peeled off the bloody gloves. Her adrenaline crashed. Her leg gave out. She stumbled, but she didn't hit the floor. Captain Thorne caught her. "I got you, Angel," he said softly. They walked her out of the O and into the waiting room. The room was full, not with patients, but with uniforms. General Sterling, the father of the boy Clarara had saved, was there. He was a terrifying man with 4 stars on his shoulder, known for eating kernels for breakfast. Beside him stood the hospital director and the rest of the board. When Clarara entered, leaning on Thorne, the room went silent. "Jim." Nerral Sterling walked up to her. He looked at his son, Corporal Sterling, who was sitting in a wheelchair nearby with a blanket around him. The boy nodded to his father, tears in his eyes. The general turned to Clara Holloway. He didn't offer a handshake. He saluted slow, deliberate, the kind of salute that carries a lifetime of respect. Behind him, 20 Marines snapped to attention, their precision a silent acknowledgement of the woman before them. "Lieutenant Commander Holloway," the general said, his voice thick with emotion. "My son tells me you walked into hell to get them. Just doing my job, sir." Clara replied softly. "No," the general said firmly. "You did more than your job. You saved the lives of 7 Marines. You secured intelligence that will save thousands more. And you did it while this." He gestured dismissively toward the hospital administrators. "Treated you like a servant." He turned to the hospital director, a man sweating in a cheap suit. "Did you know you had a Navy Cross recipient scrubbing your floors?" The director stammered, speechless. "We personnel files are confidential," he muttered weakly. "She is a hero," the general barked, "and as of this moment she is reactivated. The Navy wants her back. The Corps wants her back. She will not be emptying bedpans for you anymore." Turning back to Clarara, he said, "If you want it, the position of Chief Instructor at the Joint Special Operations Medical Training Center is yours. Colonel's rank, it's yours." Clarara's eyes flicked toward the corner of the room. Dr. Prescott was standing there small and defeated. The man who had bullied her, belittled her, called her slow. He now realized he had failed to recognize a giant in air midst. Clarara let go of Captain Thorne's arm and stood on her own 2 feet. She winced at the pain in her leg but held herself tall. She looked at Prescott not with anger, not with triumph, but with a small, pitting smile. "I think I'll take that offer, General," she said quietly. "But first, I have one loose end to tie up." She walked over to the nurse's station, pulled her old locker key from her pocket, and placed it gently on the counter. Sarah, the young nurse who had always been kind, wiped tears from her cheeks. "Goodbye, Sarah," Clarara said softly. "Don't let them push you around." She turned and walked toward the exit, flanked by the General and Captain Thorne. The automatic doors slid open, letting in the cool night air. The distant rotors of the Black Hawk had fallen silent, but the silence she left behind was louder than any engine. The quiet nurse was gone. Angel 6 had returned. For the first time in 7 years, she didn't feel the pain in her leg. She only felt the wind beneath her wings. The legend of Angel 6 didn't end that night. It was the beginning of a new chapter. Commander Ricks made a full recovery, eventually retiring to a cabin near the training center where Clara trained the next generation of combat medics. Dr. Prescott resigned a month later, his reputation in ruins, unable to command respect from a staff that had finally seen the hero he had dismissed. Clara Holloway proved that heroes don't always wear capes, they don't always run, sometimes they limp, but when the call comes, when the sky tears open and rotors scream, they fly. She was no longer defined by her injury, but by the lives she refused to let go. The scars we carry ain't signs of weakness,